as much content as possible. We've got a unique person who knows all about Bret Bielema and covering him, Alyssa Orange from our affiliate at KNWA, joining us now. Alyssa, thanks so much for taking a few moments here. Just give us a summary. You covered Bret for a long time at Arkansas. What are Illini fans getting in Bret Bielema?
Yeah, well, I think you should just kind of be excited to have Bret Bielema and the passion that he brings. I think no one is going to say anything about the kind of man he is. And when it comes to a football coach who just really is a player's coach, he's big on academics. He's hard on his players, but he loves his players. And he kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve a little bit. That's what we got from him from Arkansas. So you're going to get a guy who truly cares from the minute he walks through the door. Obviously, football fields and on the field and the wins and the losses is something else that you can debate back and forth. But I think a lot of Illini fans are going to be very happy with Bret Bielema and that hire.
What was the let's start with the end, because I think we could start at the beginning and it was all roses then, but let's start with the end. How was the exit and just the perspective from SEC fans, because it's so much higher than it is here for Illinois fans in Big Ten country, where you have Ohio State and you have Michigan and Wisconsin, even his former stop. And then you have a place like Illinois who has been to, one bowl game this decade. So how do you kind of sum up the ending there and how he left?
Yeah. Well, you said the beginning was all roses. I have to remind you that it was after Bobby Petrino wrecked his motorcycle. Arkansas had a year of John L. Smith, and then Bret Bielema came in. So it was very much like this when he came in, and a lot of fans were very excited. He was a guy that Jeff Long wanted, really, even when he made John L. the interim head coach after the whole Bobby Petrino fiasco. And he took Arkansas to 3 bowl games in 14, 15, and 16, and it looked like it was going really well. But I think that if you had to kind of look at the I hate saying demise because that's kind of more of a negative word, but the fall of Bret Bielema at Arkansas was really the end of that 2016 season when they had a 24-0 lead against Missouri, and Missouri came back and won. Then they had a 24-0 lead on Virginia Tech in the Belk Bowl, and then Virginia Tech came back and won that game. The very next year they go 4-8, and it just didn't look like it looked like it was climbing the hill, and then all of a sudden it fell off. Bret Bielema got fired after the Missouri game in 2017. And I remember I had just gotten back from maternity leave. That was my very first game back. And he was handed a piece of paper right afterwards. Jeff Long had gotten fired. So Jeff Long is no longer there as the AD. Bret Bielema and the interim AD at the time, which is Julie Cromer-Peoples, was told that he was going to be dismissed of his duties as the head coach. He says, as I was coming off the football field, he got to his office. And what was unique about that situation, I don't know if we've ever seen this before, is that after he was fired, he then held his press conference. So he walks into his press conference at Arkansas and says, I've just been relinquished of my duties as the head coach. And he gets emotional. And there's video of this press conference out there for those to watch. But it was an ending that I don't think a lot of us have ever seen really in college football. And it's hard when you're Arkansas now to look back because we lived through 2 years of Chad Morris. Now, obviously, with Sam Pittman, things are really starting to turn around. But I think that, it's just been a weird situation for Arkansas just in general with the firing of Bret Bielema and then where they are now 3 years down the road.
No, Alyssa, I've been dying to ask you this question because I know you've been around him a lot, and certainly, he has a great track record on the field, but the Illinois rumor mill turns very, very quickly. And I think a lot of people are pointing to maybe some off the field issues that he had, particularly with drinking and things like that. I'm wondering if there's any truth to that, or if there's anything like that that you covered in his time at Arkansas.
Look, I'm going to say this. I think, obviously rumors are rumors and they start somewhere. I think it's important to point out right now where Bret Bielema is in his life. When he was in Madison in Wisconsin, he was a bachelor. He had just met Jen. When he got here to Arkansas, him and Jen had just gotten married. When she left, I think Briella was maybe a year and a half because her and my son are the same age. and now he has 2 daughters. I think he's in a little bit different place in his life. I don't necessarily know if that's going to put those rumors to rest, and I will let you kind of read into that as you will. But I do think that he's got a family now, 2 girls and a wife, and kind of understands the importance. We definitely saw maybe a little bit of a weight gain when Bret Bielema was here. Obviously, we've seen that, that weight gain kind of get lost after going to New England and being with the Giants. And so, I think everyone kind of goes through lulls in life, and maybe Bret Bielema was handling some personally that maybe towards the end of his tenure at Arkansas were hurting him in recruiting, hurting him with keeping coaches. I think that's really big because Sam Pittman right now is the head coach at Arkansas, and he was Bret Bielema's offensive lineman coach. And when he left, the program really started kind of going down in recruiting. And so you can definitely pinpoint maybe some personal things that tied into things on the football field. But hindsight is 2020. We see that now. Did anyone really see that then? I don't know.
And Alyssa, I'm so glad you brought that up because no one's perfect, right? So as long as he's, a better man because of it, I think that's a huge testament to his character and, what he could bring to the program. I mean, you grow as a person, throughout all phases of life. So that's pretty good to hear.
Yeah, and Alyssa, I had a question for you. You mentioned it, the recruiting aspect of Bret Bielema. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the big draws of getting Bret Bielema from Wisconsin to Arkansas was that he was able to do so much with classes based on all the rankings that were a little bit lower, classes in the 40s and in the 30s and, consistently getting to the Rose Bowl and to bowl games. He had really good classes at Arkansas. And I know Illini fans are just desperate for a coach that is really into recruiting and getting, good players on the field. Could you kind of talk about, what maybe was the issue with those high rankings in his classes at Arkansas and not getting the results on the field, and maybe what fans can expect from Bret Bielema, the recruiter?
Yeah, well, I obviously, he's a player's coach, and I said that before. And so he recruited really, really well early around him. And I think that was because of the guys he had around him as well. One of the best recruiting stories, and I don't know if any of you guys remember Alex Collins. He was a running back out of Plantation, Florida, and he was the one whose mom stole his recruiting letter on signing day, and they couldn't find his mom, and so he was supposed to mail in his national letter of intent, but his mom stole his letter because she didn't want him to go to Arkansas, and he ended up having to call his dad, and his dad had to come over and get it. I mean, he was a 5-star running back out of Miami and ended up going to Arkansas, and that's probably one of my favorite Bret Bielema recruiting stories. But he was also a guy who had back-to-back over 1,000-yard rushing yards, and think that you're going to get, obviously, you're going to bring in some running backs. We saw that at Wisconsin. He's going to bring in big guys in the trenches like your defensive linemen and the offensive line that we saw at Arkansas early, and that we saw at Wisconsin. I think the biggest thing, and you asked me about recruiting and the drop-off, was that I don't think Bret did a really good job replacing the guys who left with guys who were better. And he always said, I'm going to hire up. I'm going to hire up. But he had Joel Thomas when he first came in, and he's now with the Saints. Then he brings in another running backs coach, and now Jamal Singleton, and he is with the Colts right now. And then he brought in the running backs coach from Kansas, and I'm blanking on his name, but it just didn't really work out that well. And same with the offensive line coach. He brought in Sam Pittman, and Sam Pittman recruited so well. They had the biggest offensive line, not just in college football, but in the NFL. And then when Sam left, he brought in Kurt Anderson, and the recruiting just dropped off. So keep an eye on that. It's really about the guys that he hires around him. And then if those guys happen to leave, who he replaces him with, and if he is able to hold up that standard.
He said, Alyssa, that he was going to bring in a 3-4 defense. Illinois has not played that defense in a long time. Lovie Smith, the defense has not been good. Overall, how do you think his defensive mindset played at Arkansas, and was it successful overall there?
Yeah, yes and no, right? So he had Chris Ash, and it was okay that first year, and then Chris Ash left to go to Ohio State, and he brings in Rob Smith, and Rob Smith turns the defense around, and they're a top 5 defense in Arkansas, and he gets this giant raise, and then the very next year the defense is Smith was he went to Minnesota a little bit. I don't know exactly where he is now. And then after that, he brought in Paul Rhodes. And Paul Rhodes might have been the best guy that he brought in as a defensive coordinator. But they were back and forth a lot. It was, we're doing this. We're doing a 3-4. Now we're doing a 4-3. Now we're going back to a 3-4. And so the one thing I can say was there wasn't a whole lot of consistency over that 4 years or 5 years because they had so many different defensive coordinators. So it'll be interesting to see again how he reacts. Now, when he got here, he was running, you're running an offense like, Bobby Petrino's where they don't really care much about defense. We're just going to score points and throw the ball. And so he did have to work extra hard to recruit defensive guys who are going to slow down the likes of, Alabama and Auburn and LSU in the SEC.
Even today, Alyssa, how do Arkansas fans view Bret Bielema?
I really think, people, again, going back to the man that he is, no one has anything negative to say about that. Obviously, you scratch your head on what happened on the football field, and that's the professional side of things. And then I don't think I'm saying anything right now that people don't know that you can't Google. I don't know right now the status of his lawsuit with the foundation, with the Razorback Foundation, and if this hiring at Arkansas or at Illinois is going to change much of that. But there's been a little bit of back and forth with the lawsuit on what he's owed and what he's not owed. And, things might have happened in New England that was allowing him to still get paid with Arkansas. And it was kind of like, so some people are like, why is he going back and forth with the university in this lawsuit? Again, I'm not telling you anything you can't Google. So, I'm interested to see exactly how that plays out.
I think it was $7 million lawsuit, wasn't it, from what he was supposed to be paid?
It's a lot of, well, I should have been paid this. Well, then Arkansas is saying that they shouldn't have to pay him because technically he took a job with New England and was getting paid like minimum wage so that he could it was basically he wasn't getting paid market price so that Arkansas could still be paid. It's a whole lot. I mean, it's like 500 pages if anyone really wants to read it, but it's a lot. So we'll see exactly like how that kind of plays itself out. But I will say this personally, he was great to me. His wife, Jen, was great to me. He's got 2 beautiful girls. So I personally am excited to see Bret Bielema back in the coaching world, in the college football ranks. I know when he got here, he kind of took some shots at the Big Ten. So he's probably going to have to kind of backtrack on a little bit of those once he got to the SEC now that he's back. But just going to say whatever he wants. He have his emotion on his sleeve, and sometimes he's going to say stuff, and you're like, that might bite you. But then other things, he says, and you're going to be like, this is fantastic. Like we were at SEC Media Days, and he was talking about winning the Texas Bowl over Texas, and he said it was borderline erotic. And we were like, what? It's what? It's what, right? And then after he beat Ole Miss, this is a video you can find too after he beat Ole Miss with the whole Hunter heave and the 4th and 25. And it was, crazy ending to that game. We're sitting in the press room and he's meant to say, I'm going to go hop on the plane with my wife. But he says, I'm going to go hop on my wife. Hop on a plane with my wife. And so that's one of the best Bielema-isms we have from our days at Arkansas. But I think overall you guys are really going to enjoy him.
All right. Bielema-isms. I like that. That's really good. We'll have to keep an eye out for those. And there's one thing I can tell you that is not Lovie Smith. I think Illini fans are going to have a nice kind of reprieve here, after Lovie Smith, who was a great guy, but just kind of said the same things over and over again and got really stale.
I tell you what, I am just really glad that Arkansas never brought Gus Malzahn back, or I didn't have to cover Auburn because he is boring. And Bielema is far from boring.
Well, that's exciting for us. I know that's always good in the media, right? Like we love those sound bites and everything else, but it's always fresh and real and honest. I think the word you said there that really I'm going to leave this with is honest, and that's great. All right, Alyssa, thank you so much. Appreciate just a couple minutes and giving us a little perspective on Bret Bielema.
Yeah, congratulations to you guys and your coaching search being over.
Yeah, right. That's always the fun thing too, is these coaching searches. It only lasted 6 days, so we can't complain too much. All right, Alyssa, thanks so much. Have a great night. All right, guys. So there is Alyssa Orange from our affiliate in KNWA. I took a lot of things from that, and like I just said, I think we're going to have a lot of fun covering Bret Bielema in the media because he's going to give us some stuff. I mean, just a couple of stories there got me excited to actually cover an Illinois football coach.
Yeah, I think he's going to provide us with a lot of great content. And I even said this today on Twitter. I was like, he is going to be an absolute hoot. He's gonna be a hoot in the press conferences. But yeah, I mean, this is like an old, like, who said that? Oh, Illinois' head strength and conditioning coach, Lou Hernandez. He once said in an interview we did with him, he was like, to do something you haven't done before, you have to do something you haven't done before. And you're like kind of thinking of that quote, like, what are you saying? But it's so true because of going back to just Lovey. I mean, obviously he was a great guy. You know, he had a lot of respect from his team, but just the stark contrast between the two. This is something that maybe Illinois hasn't done in a couple years, hiring a guy like this. You know, just taking away, of course, all of the on-field accomplishments he had, but just like the sheer personality of the guy. I think it's something that Illinois fans are going to get behind. You know, he seems like a guy that's going to get out in the community and really just know how to rally the troops ahead of what'll be next season.
Yeah, I think he was kind of showing that today when he stopped on the side of the road on College game day to do an interview. So I think at the end of all this, what's going to be most important clearly to fans is going to be what happens on the football field. And if what Alyssa, says is right and he's able to, maybe learn from what happened at Arkansas and maybe either replace those coaches that move on better or retain them a little bit better. I think fans should probably be excited because he did prove that he can recruit really well. I mean, of course, it was the SEC and he was at Arkansas, but even at Wisconsin, I mentioned that he had, some top 30 classes. There were some classes that weren't as good, but then he proves that he's able to do, a lot with a little. And if he's able to do that in Illinois, he's going to be very successful because I think we all know that at this point in time, at this juncture of Illinois football, maybe a little bit hard to convince, those kinds of recruits to, come and play for Illinois. So to do a lot with a little, I think is going to be super important to see what Bret Bielema is going to be able to accomplish here at the U of I.
And here's Bielema's number at Arkansas: 3-9 in 2013, 7-6 in 2014. That was the biggest jump he made. Then 8-5 in 15, 7-6 in 16, and then in 17, his final year, he went 4-8. Look, I think a lot of Illini fans would sign up for that in a heartbeat. To go to 3 straight bowl games, he finished tied for 3rd in the SEC in the West Division in 2015. Did finish 7th 3 times, but look, Illinois football has not been good historically the last 20 years. Overall, since the 80s, Illinois football hasn't been good. And I think Bret Bielema comes in and hopefully can provide some stability for this program that has so long needed it and wanted it. And he's proven he can do it at Wisconsin. He went to Wisconsin and yes, he had it all set up for him there. But the fact that he went to 3 straight Rose Bowls, and, won 2 Big Ten titles, I think speaks very, very highly to the kind of coach he can be and to the type of recruiter he can be. And Andy, we were talking about this earlier. He didn't recruit a top 30 class at Wisconsin, but that's just system, right? He knows what he was trying to get. They develop players. And I think more than anything, if Illinois can come in and develop players, and they might not even have to do that right away because of the transfer portal, which is something we talked about on the pregame show with Jeremy and Robert, is they can go to the transfer portal right away and get some players, and then you hope that you can coach them right away and then continue to restock the high school talent, not just solely rely on transfers like Lovey did the last couple of years. Start early with transfers, and then develop your high school talent behind it. And I think that's going to be the recipe for success for them.
Yeah, and Bret, you mentioned the bowl games. To go back to that point for a second, I mean, Bielema has coached a team to a bowl game in 10 out of his 12 seasons. Illinois hasn't had that many bowl games, or has had that many bowl games going back to 1992, I believe is the number. So if he's able to have that kind of success at Illinois, of course fans are going to take that. And it's hard to put that expectation on a new coach, but that's exciting when you know a coach is capable of that. And like you mentioned, maybe he was came into that at Wisconsin, but he still had to do it as a coach. So, that's super exciting for, Illini fans, I think, to see.
Marley, final thoughts from today and what's been a wild week here.
Yeah, it certainly has. I'm glad, things are settled. They're over. We know who it's going to be going forward. And it's just that he's proven himself at the Big Ten level, at the SEC level to some extent. And I think Illinois just needs a little bit of change of pace. I'm really bad at embracing change myself. I'm like, oh no, like there's going to be a new coach. But I think this is what this program is needed, given what the Lovie-Smith era has provided for this program. Of course, it wasn't where Josh Whitman wanted the program to go. And for them to sign a 6-year deal with Bielema, I think shows that they have a lot of faith in him, that they're considering him a guy that, isn't just going to come here and give these like little flashes of success like maybe coaches in the past have done. It shows that they're invested in him in the long run and hopefully turning this program around and getting it to the point where they want it to be.
Yeah, and 97-58 overall record is really dang good in college football, 37-19 in the Big Ten. I know a lot of Illini Nation will take that in a heartbeat, no matter what you think of Bret. And as Alyssa said, he's a better man for maybe his past and moving forward, now married with 2 girls. And we will see him for the first time in Champaign. Hopefully tomorrow he is flying back to Champaign with Josh Whitman in the morning. We'll meet the team, and then he'll have a formal press conference on Monday at 1 o'clock where we will hear more from Bret Bielema. All right, Marley Weirda, Andy Olson, thank you. It's been fun. And thanks to Alyssa Orange for her insight from our sister station at KNWA. We'll talk to you next time, hopefully Monday after the Bret Bielema presser on our next 3-in-1 podcast.